Number 10. Lauren Sheba. Lauren is actually very unique. While technically not the first female Red Ranger, that honor goes to Charlie, who led the evil A-Squad team during Power Rangers SPD, but Lauren is the first good female Red Ranger. And it was a really big deal. Lauren takes over as the Red Samurai Ranger from her brother Jaden, and let's just say some of her fellow Rangers aren't too happy about it. But in the short time she's given, Lauren proves just how good of a leader she really is, even outdoing her own brother. She had to prove herself against all odds, and she succeeded, helping the Rangers win in the end. Now, like I mentioned, Lauren came in later and didn't have a lot of time, but proved herself a lot in the time she was given. The cool thing was that in the Boom comic series during Shattered Grid event, she was given a lot more to do, and was crucial in stopping Draken, and helped turn things back to normal in the end. She has also become so popular that she just got announced as a new DLC for the console game Power Rangers Battle for the Grid.
Number 9. Power Rangers Jungle Fury. Jungle Fury, the 16th season of the show, was a bit of a victim of circumstance. It took place during the 2007-2008 Writers Guild strike, which means several episodes in the middle had to be written by non-union writers instead of the original ones. When the real writers came back, they were stuck trying to work everything back into a cohesive story that they liked, and it got kinda weird. That said, it actually turned out to be a pretty popular season. It started out with just 3 Rangers, which let us really get to know them, plus their martial arts were totally rad. But there were definitely some drawbacks too. The villains were largely considered weak, one of whom was named Jared. I'll let you figure out how popular that decision was. And since the writers were stuck in a corner thanks to the strike, the ending was super anticlimactic. But it wasn't the worst season ever, and the theme song was totally rockin'. Number 8. Power Rangers Turbo. Power Rangers Turbo involves a new take on the Rangers where they have Turbo Zords. Then by that I mean they have cars. If you're getting Transformers vibes, you should be. However, as per usual, the Turbo Zords can all come together if they're in trouble to form a Turbo Megazord, which was at the time the most powerful Megazord ever created. I was about 7 when this first came out, and I can remember being so disappointed when the awesome dinosaurs were replaced with frickin' cars, but some people like it.
Number 7. Jason and Kimberly. I feel like some people might have forgotten about this one, but to this day it's still one of the scariest Evil Ranger moments. I mean, their deep, altered voices were just scary all on their own. But if you don't remember, let me jog your memory. Evil Jason and Kimberly didn't come from an episode or a comic book. It came from a movie, Turbo, a Power Rangers movie to be exact. Divatox kidnaps and sacrifices them as a part of her plan to bring back Malagor. And the two of them come back as evil minions for him. They have enhanced strength, deep voices, as I mentioned, and red eyes. It makes for a truly terrifying combo. They fight the Turbo Rangers and actually do a ton of damage. Eventually they were restored back to normal and all is well, but it was still so cool and terrifying to see them take on the Rangers like that. Plus, fans finally got to see Jason in a Power Rangers movie, since he wasn't included in the Mighty Morphin movie, which was really sad. Number 6. Shane Clark. Shane is the Red Wind Ranger from Power Rangers Ninja Storm. He was a member of the Wind Ninja Academy, but at the beginning, not one of its best students. Shane, Dustin, and Tori were all constantly late for class and lost in fights against fellow students. But after the Wind Ninja Academy and all of its other students were all taken away by the villain Lothar, Shane was one of the last 3 students and at that moment chosen to become the Red Wind Ranger. Even though he turned out to be one of the last choices for the role, he became a damn good one. Shane was a great leader. But I mean, he didn't start off that way. He was a bit of a slacker, and he just loved skateboarding. He grew a lot over the course of the season from a guy who, couldn't get to ninja class on time to the guy who ended up running it. Yes, he became an instructor in the end. Shane also is unique in the fact that he is one of the few Red Rangers to have powers outside of his costume. He has super speed, stealth, and can fly in a sense. Shane was a guy that wanted to prove that he could be more, not only to himself, but to his family, specifically his older brother, who thought Shane was just a screw-up and would never make anything of himself. Well, over the course of the season, he not only helped defeat Lothar, but also proved to himself, his team, and his family that he was a lot more capable than he thought.
Number 5. Power Rangers Mystic Force. This is the other boo-boo I made in part 1, where instead of Mystic Force, I accidentally used Mystic Warriors. People need to be more imaginative with their damn fan-made names. Anyway, all saltiness aside, Mystic Force is right up my alley. Because there's magic. and I love magic. Mystic Force is way more fantasy inspired than other versions. Years ago, an army of the undead led by the evil Mordecon tried to take over the human realm. However, a legion of wizards managed to drive them off and cast them back to the underworld. But then when the show begins, the army is once again attacking, and in true Power Ranger fashion, 5 teenagers are chosen to fight the undead army using magic. The Zords are similarly fantastical, with a phoenix, a Garuda, mermaid, a sprite, and a minotaur, which is totally badass. They even make friends with a genie. Yeah. If you're looking for a change of pace, Mystic Force is the way to go. Number 4. Power Rangers Samurai. Even if you haven't been paying much attention to Power Rangers recently, you may be aware of Power Rangers Samurai. I certainly heard a lot about it a while back. This is based on the 33rd season of Super Sentai and sees the Rangers with samurai-based costumes. They fight against the surprisingly cool-looking netherworld creatures called the Nilox. In this series, the main Zords are called Folding Zords, bizarrely, and they're based on a lion, a dragon, a turtle, a bear, and an ape. And yes, the turtle is by far the worst one.
Number 3. Lord Draken. Okay, so this was tough because Lord Draken could have easily been number 1. And I mean, this just shows you how many good evil rangers there are. I mean, because of all the things he's done, and the fact that he's brand new, which makes it even more impressive. He's Tommy Oliver from an alternate universe, who, after being defeated by Jason, decided to stay evil and went back to Rita. His goal from then on was to not only destroy the rangers of his world, but every world. He created ranger sentries from the powers of the rangers he killed, and technically he ultimately won by creating his own dimension, although they ended up changing it. But Draken killed so many rangers and destroyed so many worlds that overall he did accomplish more than any evil ranger ever, and that's a massive achievement. Plus, Jason David Frank actually got to play him in live action for the Shattered Grid comic event trailer, which was very cool. Here's hoping we get to see Lord Draken officially show up in a Power Rangers film or TV show one day, because that would be so awesome.
Number 2. Power Rangers Dino Thunder. Dino Thunder was, in my opinion, one of the coolest looking teams of all the seasons. It was the 12th season and saw the return of Dinosaurs, something that I'm always a fan of. It also saw the return of none other than Tommy Oliver, the hugely popular character best known as the Green Ranger. This time he was fittingly a paleontology professor, and 3 of his detention students found dino gems, turning them and Tommy into Dino Rangers. The gems gave them superpowers, with different members gaining different powers, like super speed, super strength, and a sonic scream. They had a bunch of cool weapons and vehicles, but as with any dinosaur season, the highlight for me is the Zords. Tyrannosaurs, Tricerazord, Pterazord, Dragozord, Stegozord. So great. Dinosaurs are cool. And there's a bit of a confusing story behind this one too. The Dino Gems came from the meteors that killed off the dinosaurs, but in Dino Supercharge End of Extinction, it was retconned so that the dinosaurs never went extinct, so these rangers wouldn't have gotten their powers. But then Super Ninja Steel revealed that Dino Charge actually took place in an alternate universe, so everything is still canon. Good. Number 1. The Boom Comics. Just a few years ago, Boom Studios started doing a new Power Rangers comic book series, and it's pretty wicked. And yeah, Boom has an exclamation mark after it, so I have to say it like that. An upcoming story arc tells of another version of the Power Rangers. In their reality, the Green Ranger went rogue and killed all the other Rangers, and took over his own world, becoming Lord Draken. But he isn't satisfied with just one world, because now he'll be going around to other worlds to take out all the Rangers around. This is a celebration of the 25th anniversary and won't be a comic to miss. Look forward to that in spring 2018. And no, they aren't paying me to say that, it just looks cool.
Number 10. The Ranger Sentries. The Ranger Sentries are one of the newer additions to this list, but in such a short time they have made a massive impression. I mean, they even made their way into the Power Rangers fighting game Battle for the Grid. But for those who don't know, the Ranger Sentries are from the Boom Studios comic series. They work for the villainous Lord Draken and are soldiers who are connected to the Morphin Grid with powers Draken stole from Rangers he killed. They look awesome and they have their own powerful weapons and were a key part of the Shattered Grid event. And they help Draken take over multiple worlds and kill tons of Rangers and civilians. Number 9. Andros. I feel like a lot of people might be a little bit angry that Andros is a little higher on this list, but in the grand scheme of things, he was a really great Ranger, and had the added benefit of being in one of the best seasons, Power Rangers in Space. Andros was from a space colony, and while tracking down some leads, bumped into the Turbo Rangers. Some of them went on to join him as the Space Rangers, although not right away. He didn't really trust them all, and that is one of his biggest faults. His lack of trust in anyone. While he does end up overcoming it, it did hurt him a lot during the season. But he has a very compelling arc throughout the whole thing. To save his sister. This is his central conflict for the whole season and comes to a massive conclusion near the end, which wraps up a ton of stories that started all the way back in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. The whole thing felt kind of like a series finale for the Power Rangers in general, but as we all know, it ended up continuing, and we got some great seasons after. But during the final moments of the season, Andros had to make the difficult choice to destroy Zordon, and by doing so, save his sister, but also turn a lot of other villains good, including Rita and Lord Zed. It was a big deal, and Andros made the difficult decision to do it, and in that moment proved how good of a ranger he was. The ability to make the hard choices.
Number 8. Power Rangers Wild Force. Here's the first of my boo-boos from last time, because I accidentally used a fan-made Wild Prime instead of Wild Force. Jerks. But this time I've got the right one, and it's a really cool one. First and foremost, the Zords are insanely cool. They had all sorts of awesome animal Zords: giraffe, shark, elephant, eagle, lion, tiger, and bears. Oh my! Sorry, got carried away. As I was saying, the Wild Force had a bunch of Zords with even more combinations. They fought against the Orgs, the evil mutant demon things with horns, who, as the Red Ranger learned, have no hearts, and one was a wedding dress. Like previous seasons, the Wild Force had team-up episodes, but they took it a bit further this time. Since it was the 10th season, they did something special and had an episode called Forever Red. It saw Cole Evans, the Wild Force Red Ranger, team up with the other 9 Red Rangers in a final showdown with the Machine Empire. It was pretty cool. Number 7. The 2017 film. I think everyone was waiting for this one to come up. The 2017 film took quite a few creative liberties to make the franchise a bit more adult and grittier, as well as somewhat more realistic and less campy. Gone are the spandex suits that inexplicably shoot sparks when they're hit. They were replaced with awesome suits of armor that both look amazing and offer more realistic protection. The film wasn't perfect, but it was visually pretty awesome and had probably the coolest Megazord I've ever seen. Plus, Bryan Cranston. Come on.
Number 6. The Ranger Slayer. Like the Ranger Sentries, the Ranger Slayer comes from the comic series and is a new addition to the Power Rangers canon. The Ranger Slayer is actually Kimberly Hart, who is the original Pink Ranger from an alternate reality. But don't be fooled. She is not a good guy. Well, I mean at first. She was brainwashed into working for Draken and ended up killing other Power Rangers. Her story in that dimension was actually pretty similar to the original, at first. That is until Draken kills some of her teammates and her boyfriend, which makes her try to go and take on him herself. She has an altered suit and possesses the Bow of Darkness, and became known as the Ranger Slayer. The Ranger Slayer is scary, deadly, and one of the coolest things to come out of the Power Rangers comics. Number 5. Carter Grayson. Carter, the Red Lightspeed Ranger. Even before becoming a Power Ranger, Carter was saving people as a firefighter. The reason he became one was because when he was a kid, he was saved by another firefighter, Captain Mitchell, who, he later ended up working for. He has always put his life on the line to save others, so it should come as no surprise that he was chosen to be one of the Power Rangers. He is a by-the-book kind of guy and doesn't really like to stray from that, which makes him stand out from other Red Rangers who usually will be a bit of, wild cards. Carter is also one that will never back down from a fight. He stopped Queen Ben-Shira by throwing her into the Shadow World and was one of the Rangers to return for not only the Forever Red special, but also the Legendary Battle. Carter may not be a Ranger who has changed that much over the years, but he is a dedicated leader and someone who will always be there for his team and the citizens of Mariner Bay whenever they need him.
Number 4. Power Rangers in Space. Last list, a lot of people had an issue with the fact that I had Lost Galaxy and not In Space. Frankly, it was just because I watched Last Galaxy more when I was a kid, but as luck would have it, I get to do a part 2, so we can have both. Power Rangers in Space was the 6th season in the franchise and was actually intended to be the last. But the ratings were so huge, it kinda saved the franchise. Why the big ratings? Well, they changed up a bunch of things. It was the first season to use an orchestral score instead of rock music. It changed up a bunch of the characters, but most of all, it was the conclusion to the previous 6 seasons, which really helped to revitalize the story, which was becoming a bit dull. This season saw the Space Rangers, with their astromorphers, taking on the evil Astronema, who was a sister of the Red Ranger Andros, while trying to save Zordon. The Zords aren't as cool as some of the other seasons since they're just spaceships, but the emotional conclusion to the Zordon era was pretty great. And sad. R.I.P. Zordon. Number 3. Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Oh my god, I had completely forgotten about this show, but right when I saw the title, the theme song suddenly popped into my head so clearly. Wow. Lost Galaxy is kinda like Power Rangers meets Star Trek, and it was pretty awesome. At least 8-year-old Ron thought so. Coolest thing about this series was the Psycho Rangers, an evil group of Power Rangers who work for the villains Scorpius and Trakina. And just look at them, they're so sick! Plus, in the beginning, instead of Zords, they have Galactabeasts, which look like this. And they're just by far the coolest looking Zords of all of them. Except Wildcat. The Wildcat looks so...
Number 2, the Green Ranger. Okay, so I might get a little hate for this, maybe, since a lot of people would consider Tommy to be number 1. Because yes, he is awesome, and he almost was number 1. This was really hard. Tommy was the original evil ranger. He started the trend. The Green Ranger was so popular. I mean, everyone loved him. After he was gone, they got so many requests to bring him back that they did bring him back. He consistently defeated the Rangers in battle. I mean, he even jumped into the Megazord and destroyed them in there, something that no other villain did. And it didn't end there. He even teleported into the command center and he destroyed it. He seriously injured Alpha and Zordon. The latter took a long time for them to fix. Once they found out that it was their friend Tommy, it caused even more of a rift because he knew everything about them. There would be no evil Power Rangers without Tommy, and he will always be remembered as one of the best. But now we head on to number 1, Jason Lee Scott, the original Red Ranger. Jason started it all, and to this day is still the best Red Ranger out there. He is this fearless leader and will never give up, no matter what. He led his team through many battles and was the one to take down one of their greatest foes, the Green Ranger. He always looked out for his team and was always putting them in front of himself. He even taught free karate classes at Ernie so that kids could learn self-defense. And fans were devastated when he left in season 2, but the new Boom comic series has added a lot of new stories for him as the Red Ranger. During the Shattered Grid event, he was the one that led every single Power Ranger in history in the fight against Lord Draken. No other Red Ranger could have done that. And now he's been a Red Ranger more than once, because in the comics he is now the Red Omega Ranger. Jason is the first and the greatest Red Ranger of them all, and that is something that will never change.
Number 10, Power Rangers Ninja Storm. Ninja Storm, the 11th season, was a weird time for Power Rangers. They barely survived being cancelled by moving filming to New Zealand and going non-union, and the New Zealand thing stuck. The show continued to be filmed there for years. But this season did see the return of OG production manager Doug Sloan, who was with the show from the beginning up until Turbo. As you probably guessed, this was a ninja-inspired team fighting against the evil and surprisingly funny Lothor with the help of their Zords and Power Spheres, as well as a number of weapons and gadgets. It was a lot more lighthearted than previous versions, which some fans loved and others didn't like. Personally, I think the whole concept of Power Rangers is so damn campy that it's best to keep it as lighthearted as possible, so I love this. Let's be real, this is a formulaic show where people beat up big baddies and hop in their big machines and fight them some more. It's not The Godfather. Give me some damn levity. Number 9, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I think it's important to throw up the OG Power Rangers, at least in the West, so non-fans have something to compare other versions to. This was a show that first introduced us to this type of series, and it was a hit. Rocking the aforementioned colorful spandex suits, 5 young people fought evil with the help of their awesome Zords. What are Zords? Only badass mechs based on prehistoric beasts. No big deal. Interestingly, while Western actors were used in the dialogue scenes, many of the action scenes were actually taken from the original Super Sentai series to save money, and that's not really uncommon in Power Rangers.
Number 8, Rita Repulsa movie version. Let me just say I love the 2017 Power Rangers movie. It honored the original series, but brought its own unique modern spin. Unfortunately, it didn't do as well as they were hoping, so the sequel got scrapped, and now we will never see those Rangers fight Tommy Oliver in the sequel like the after credits scene was teasing. But we did get to see them fight a Green Ranger, and that was of course Rita Repulsa. Yes, in this version, Rita was actually part of the original Ranger team that was led by Zordon. It was a cool twist. It added a really unique dynamic to the Ranger-Rita rivalry. She was the Green Ranger of that team and killed the other Rangers except Zordon, who was the Red. He managed to get their power coins and hide them from her until they could find new Rangers worthy of harnessing their power. Rita kept hers, and once she returns, she uses that coin, and we get to see her harness the Green Ranger power plus her own, and it was pretty awesome. It was cool to see how her suit adapted and got kind of corrupted. She was a great villain, and the ending set up her and her base on the moon. Elizabeth Banks did such a good job, and I would have loved to see where they would have taken her in the sequels. Number 7, Wes Collins. Wes, the Red Time Force Ranger. The interesting thing is, even though Wes was the Red Ranger, he wasn't the leader of his team. It was actually Jen, the Pink Ranger, who led it. And it actually worked out. Wes was not ready to be a leader when he started. I mean, he was just kind of this spoiled rich kid who got money from his father. But after Jen's fiance, Alex, dies, also played by Jason Font, Wes becomes the new Time Force Red Ranger. Throughout the course of the season, Wes becomes a hero, and his team becomes his family. He was willing to sacrifice his own life for theirs, when he finds out that they would all perish if they stayed to fight with him in the past, so he sent them to the future. Of course, they all return, finding out that he would die if they didn't, and they kind of create a new destiny together. In the end, when he stays in the past, he becomes the leader of the Silver Guardians, a police organization created by his father, and gets Eric, aka the Quantum Ranger, to be his second in command. Wes also returned in the 25th anniversary of Power Rangers, titled Dimensions in Danger, where he was leading a group of other legendary Rangers. I mean, he has come a long way from just being some spoiled rich kid.
Number 6. Power Rangers RPM. RPM, the 17th season of Power Rangers, almost didn't get made, since Disney originally planned to cancel the series after Jungle Fury. But possibly due to a contract dispute with Bandai, they caved and made RPM. And it went off to a pretty crazy start, with executive producer Eddie Gazalian having blown through the entire budget halfway through the season. So he was fired. But the season ended up being fairly well received. Personally, I love the Zords. A lot of the vehicle seasons have kind of lame ones where they're just like cars or spaceships. But that's lame, I want animals. And RPM made a compromise, making cars that look like animals. A shark, wolf, croc, eagle, lion, bear, falcon, tiger, whale. So many. And they're pretty cool. The series was actually pretty dark too, taking place in a post-apocalyptic wasteland in an alternate universe, which was weird for some, especially with how strange it was having colorful rangers in a dreary wasteland, but they were so badass that a lot of people were totally cool with it. Oh, and are you wondering what RPM stands for? Me too. They never actually said in the show. One would assume rotations per minute, but that isn't exactly badass. But Bandai says it stands for Racing Performance Machine, so let's go with that. Side note, Bandai sounds totally wrong. Should it be Bandai? All the commercials say Bandai. I don't know what to believe. Number 5. The Mighty Morphin Alien Rangers. Most Rangers are human coming from Earth, which makes sense because most actors nowadays tend to be human for some reason. However, in Alien Rangers, the Power Rangers have been turned to children, and Zordon needs to get new Rangers from the planet Aquitar. Aquitar also has 5 water-dwelling alien Rangers that protect their planet, and they're enlisted to protect Earth while its Rangers are stuck as kids. They fight using their telepathically controlled Battleborgs, not to be confused with the Beetleborgs, who look really similar but are from a different show altogether.
Number 4. The White Dino Ranger. Trent Fernandez Mercer, aka the White Dino Ranger. Trent was the adoptive son of the big bad of the season, Mesogog, also known as Tommy's former colleague and friend, Anton Mercer. Trent's real parents were archaeologists who were killed while on a mission with Anton, so he decided to take him in. Trent eventually comes in contact with the White Dino Gem, which was created by Tommy and Anton, and turns into the White Ranger, which gives him one of the coolest Ranger suits ever. Like seriously, it's in the top 5. The Dino Gem gives him super speed and the ability to camouflage. The gem was tampered with and ended up corrupting him, which is why he ended up going evil, since before he found it, Trent was friends with Connor, Ethan, and Kira, and of course Tommy Oliver, who is now known as Dr. Tommy Oliver, since he earned a PhD in paleontology, which is something I never thought would happen. But I mean, in Power Rangers universe, I guess, anything is possible. But back to Trent, he became one of the greatest evil Rangers by not only besting the main 3 Dino Rangers, but also Tommy on multiple occasions, who, as everyone knows, is one of the best. Like a lot of other evil Rangers, he ends up turning to the good side eventually, but that does not take away from all the mayhem he caused before that point. Number 3. Tommy Oliver. Some fans might be angry that Tommy isn't number 1, and I get that. And while it might be up for debate on the greatest Rangers of all time list, he is more known for his other colors. But that doesn't take away from how good of a Red Ranger he was. Now, Tommy was 2 Red Rangers, the Red Zeo Ranger and the Red Turbo Ranger. But he wasn't a Turbo Ranger for very long, and he passes it on to TJ, who we just talked about earlier. But even before becoming the Red Ranger and Zeo, he was kind of leading the Mighty Morphin team as the White Ranger, which is kind of crazy when you think about it, because he started out as this evil Ranger outcast and ended up working his way up and leading multiple Ranger teams. He even semi-led the Dino Rangers in Dino Thunder. He's courageous, selfless, and cares about his team. Heck, he was the one to bring all the Red Rangers together in the Forever Red team-up special in 2002. Tommy has also showed time and time again that he cared about everyone else more than himself. I mean, he even revealed himself as the Red Zeo Ranger to save his brother David, which put himself in grave danger, but he did it because he wanted to make sure he was safe no matter the cost to his own life. And that is a true leader.
Stupid. Number 2. Power Rangers Mystic Warriors. This is definitely the most magical of the Power Rangers teams, and as a fantasy nerd, it makes me so happy. I wish I was younger when this came out. I would have been all over it. This was the first team to actually become their Zords rather than pilot them, which was wicked. They turn into Zords based on the Phoenix, Garuda, Mermaid, Sprite, and my personal favorite, the Minotaur. Yeah. Plus they have really cool Megazords. If everyone except Phoenix combines, they turn into the Mystic Dragon, which Mystic Phoenix can then ride. How cool is that?
Number 1. the Psycho Rangers. Now, like I said, I know a lot of people would put Tommy as number one, and rightfully so. But while Tommy started the trend of the evil Rangers, the Psycho Rangers took that concept and ran with it. They were absolutely terrifying, and not only tormented one Ranger team, but two. They fought both the Space Rangers and the Lost Galaxy Rangers, where the pink Psycho Ranger was technically responsible for the death of the pink Lost Galaxy Ranger Kendricks, which was the first time a Ranger had actually died in the show's history, which was a massive deal. They were so popular that they even ended up introducing a new Psycho Ranger in the comics, the Green Psycho Ranger, who was, you guessed it, also insanely evil, killing Rangers from the original Mighty Morphin team who went on a mission to the moon in the year 1969. Now, of course, that is during comic continuity and not TV show continuity. But regardless, they changed everything. I mean, they even returned in the new graphic novel Power Rangers the Psychopath, which was also amazing.
Number 10, Super Sentai. That's Sentai. If we're talking about Power Rangers, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about their inspiration, Super Sentai. Yes, I know they might not technically be a version of the Power Rangers, but screw it, it's important. Super Sentai was the original Japanese team found in the famous series. It generally involves 5 people who receive special powers and fight evil with the help of their mechanical beasts or vehicles, often combining to form a larger version. This idea was eventually taken to the West using the series Kyoryo Sentai Tsurenga as a rubric to bring us the Power Rangers. It even kept the same episode style, with the colorful good guys beating up the baddie of the week, which then gets bigger, so the good guys combine into a Megazord to get bigger, and they beat the big bad. Super Sentai is super predictable, but hey, it has 42 seasons, so I guess it's working.
Number 9, A-Squad. I feel like A-Squad would be probably a bit higher on this list if they were in it more. They were mentioned a lot throughout the season, but they were only in it for like a couple of episodes. They were this famous team of Rangers that were, the best for in the SPD. Even better than the main Rangers of the series, who were the B-Squad. Well, turns out that they were actually just straight up evil and not as perfect as everyone thought. They also had some interesting outfits. Their helmets were, of course, from Power Rangers in Space, but the rest of them was a hybrid of like a Ranger suit and also some high-tech military armor. It was actually really cool. I wish we could have learned more about them and had them in more episodes, but hey, they were still cool in the time they were given. And the story of the SPD's fabled A-Squad turning out to be the villains was actually really, really interesting. Number 8. Connor McKnight. Oh man, Connor is probably one of the most unlikable Red Rangers. At first. I mean, he was this rude jock who constantly disrespected other people. I mean, mainly women. He was also a massive bully towards fellow Ranger Ethan. And for the longest time, he wasn't even really leading his own team. Tommy was, as their mentor and later as the Black Dino Ranger. But as the season went on, Connor evolved and became a real leader, and learned to respect other people. I mean, near the beginning, he wanted to ditch being a Power Ranger and become a soccer star. He decided to stay with the Rangers and become a better person instead. And, in the end, he did end up getting the best of both worlds. Well, kind of. I mean, he didn't become the soccer player he always wanted to be, but he was a Ranger and he ended up opening soccer camps for people all around the world, which was a nice touch and a good end to his arc. That kind of growth was nice to see, and making everyone hate him at the beginning was a very unique and interesting way to start off this Red Ranger's journey. But it worked, and people consider Dino Thunder to be one of the best seasons ever.
Number 7. Power Rangers Time Force. Time Force was the 9th season of Power Rangers, and similar to In Space and Lost Galaxy, it's generally considered to be among the darker seasons. It involved death and social issues like racism more than previous seasons. Instead of teens, the Time Force was made up of professional adults, Time Force officers who went to the past to stop Ransik and his army of convicts. Ransik was pretty interesting relative to other Power Rangers villains, since he actually had some good qualities. He clearly cared about his daughter Nadira, even turning himself in at the end after he accidentally hits her. Also, fun fact, they had to cut certain scenes out of the final version. This is because this season came out soon after the attack on September 11th, and scenes of people screaming while buildings come crashing down would have been kind of in bad taste. Okay, that wasn't actually a fun fact, so that was just a fact. Oh, and that reminds me, if you're a fan of the show Friends, there was one airport scene that ended up being cut because of 9/11, but if you want to see it, look up Friends Airport Security. I was so psyched to see 4 minutes of Friends that I had never seen. Didn't even plan this. Number 6. Power Rangers Wild Prime. In this version of the Rangers, the immortal Amazon Gaia called upon the Prime Beasts to find 5 warriors to fight against the evil sorceress, who also used to be a fellow Amazon. This gave us 5 new Rangers with animal motifs to their costumes, who used their various Prime Zords, including Eagle, Shark, Lion, Elephant, and Tiger. They also teamed up with 2 different sets of Power Rangers teams, including the Pirate Armada Rangers, and a veteran team with Rangers from all different series. They fight against the evil sorceress dangerous who turns out to be an eco-terrorist, leading to some environmental themes in the show. Gets kinda Captain Planet-y, but it's pretty cool.
Number 5. The Thunder Rangers. Man, let me start off by saying Power Rangers Ninja Storm is seriously one of the best seasons that they have ever done. They have great team, great suits, an awesome villain, and some of the best character development in any Power Rangers season. Plus, they also had 2 of the best evil Rangers, Hunter and Blake, who are also known as the Crimson and Navy Thunder Rangers. They were tricked by Lothar, who was the main big bad of the season, into thinking the Wind Rangers were the bad guys and that they were responsible for their parents' death. They constantly got the upper hand on Shane, Tori, and Dustin, but in the end, realized the truth and eventually became their allies. Their journey was one of the highlights of the season as you understand why they were doing what they were doing. Throw in the fact that they had some of the coolest suits and moments of any evil Rangers, and it just makes for an amazing evil Ranger. Number 4. TJ Johnson. TJ wasn't the first Red Turbo Ranger, but he's probably the most well-known Red Turbo Ranger. You see, Tommy was the first one to take on those powers, but he eventually passed the power on to TJ at one point during the season. A lot of people also know TJ as the Blue Space Ranger, which, he became right after. Honestly, in the short time he was given, TJ made a really big impression, and a lot of fans wish he could have, been the Red Ranger longer. And imagine being the guy that had to succeed Tommy. That would have been nerve-wracking since Tommy was so popular, but TJ managed to do it, and still went on to be one of the more popular Rangers around. To start off, he saved Tommy before he even was a Ranger. He didn't hesitate to put his own life on the line to save someone he didn't even know, which is why Tommy ended up choosing him to take the power. When he became the Red Turbo Ranger, he constantly put his life on the line to protect his team. Near the end of the season, he sacrifices the Zords and almost his own life to stop Divatox. Even when the power chamber was being destroyed, TJ made sure that he wouldn't leave Alpha behind, even though he could have died trying to save him.
Number 3. Power Rangers Zeo. Zeo was a big one for Power Rangers. It was the 4th season and the first time that the costumes changed. This would of course be the first of many costume changes, and it wasn't exactly a surprise since Super Sentai did the same thing a lot, but it was still a bit risky, especially since kids often don't do so well with change. However, since the ratings were dropping, they knew they had to change things up, and rather than killing off a main character, they decided to change up the costumes and also power up the Rangers. It was the first time robotic villains were seen, when previously the Rangers had more or less had the monopoly on robotics. Anyway, Zeo saw a new set of Rangers take on the mantle after harnessing the power of the Zeo Crystal, becoming Power Rangers Zeo. They used their weapons and Zeo Zords to take on King Mondo's army of mechs. Mondo was basically Dr. Eggman from Sonic with his mechanical minions, but he somehow managed to be even less competent.
Number 2. Leo Corbin. Leo has one of the most interesting Red Ranger origins of all time. I mean, he wasn't even supposed to be one. His brother Mike was. You see, Mike was the one that pulled the red Quasar Saber from the stone, not Leo. But during the battle, when the whole world is turning into stone, Mike sacrifices his life and passes the sword onto his little brother, Leo. Everyone thought it was a mistake because Leo was seen kind of as like a screw-up, but Leo decides to take on the mantle and ends up proving them all wrong and becoming one of the best Red Rangers in the show's history. He started off as this impulsive, leap before looking kind of type and grew into a leader that the rest of the Rangers trusted. Whereas a lot of other Red Rangers start off as pretty good leaders, Leo grew into the role gradually as the season went on. And it was really cool to see. He was also the one to defeat Trakina at the end of the season. Leo's story is one of the best, and even though he wasn't the Red Ranger the team wanted, he was the Red Ranger the team needed.
Number 1. Power Rangers SPD. SPD, the 13th season, is seen as one of the best by some, but not all fans agree. SPD, or Space Patrol Delta, takes place in 2025, when the Trubian Empire decides to attack Earth. The A Squad of the SPD decides to go rogue, so the B Squad has to take the reins, and the series had a lot going for it. The acting was actually quite good, with surprisingly decent actors bringing some legitimacy to the show. This allowed for more character-centric episodes, with each character getting their own episode to flesh out their personality, which is probably part of why some younger viewers didn't like it as much. They had some cool weapons and cool vehicles, although they weren't animals, so they lost out a bit in my books. It was also the first season to have a female Red Ranger, which was pretty nifty. Go ahead, call me a soy boy, I think it's great. That said, the season wasn't perfect. Some fans thought they borrowed too much from the Super Sentai counterpart, and others thought the characters were boring. But that doesn't stop SPD from being one of the highest rated seasons ever.